the translator has got an extremely important role, and you have this very special relation around the text. Maybe you would like to say something about the experience of translating Ajay stories,
sure,
and the challenges as well, and your audience.
Yeah. So the great privilege. I felt that translating this collection of stories was a tremendous privilege. I have known Ajay for 10 years. We met when I went to India to start my dissertation research, and he's been a tremendous support and friend and intellectual mentor for me as I've done the work that I've done. And so it came to be through a series of sort of happy coincidences that the two of us and a publisher of what is a man named S. Anand, who runs a publishing house in Delhi that focuses particularly on issues of caste. All the books that he comes out with, and he's only just started fiction. Well, I'll just tell a story. He's only just started to publish fiction, and he had recently come to Delhi and had decided that instead of sort of political tracts and historical books and the other things that he's published, he was interested in studying fiction. He read a short bio or a short sort of review of Ajay that had come out in an English language magazine in Delhi called Telka. He contacted Ajay and said, "Is there anyone translating your work?" And Ajay said, "Well, there's this woman in Colorado, where I lived at the time, Laura, with whom I've worked for several years, and I happen to know on and otherwise because this is all a very small world." And then it happened I was coming to Delhi in 2 weeks, and so I arrived and we scheduled an event somewhat like this, except that I didn't have translations ready, but we scheduled an event at a center connected to Delhi University, and Ajay did a reading of another story, a story Subcontinent, which is also in this collection, and then I gave a sort of analytical paper about that story afterwards. And we started working, and then that night over kebabs we hatched the plan to publish this book. And I started working on it soon thereafter. And I think, the great advantage that I had as a translator for this project was having Ajay there to help me at every stage. And because we had this long relationship, this long professional relationship before this, I think we both trusted each other. And he was really, as an author, a tremendously helpful person to work with, because he never once sort of asserted his own thought about what the translation of something should be, but he was tremendously generous in explaining, sometimes many times over, what something meant or what he meant by something in the story. What's difficult about translating Ajay's work is that despite its seeming simplicity, it's actually very complex, because a lot of the sentences, a lot of the particular turns of phrase and words that he uses reverberate metaphorically in a lot of different ways, and to maintain that in English was very difficult. And so I asked Ajay tons of questions whenever we met in Delhi. I came to India several times while I was working on this. I also could email him, and he always responded with energy and excitement and most of all patience, which is what I needed every single time, and that was fantastic. Then when I finished the first set of drafts, and this I think speaks to the question of audience, when I finished the first set of drafts, it went back to Ajay and to the publisher Anand, and both of them sort of worked through them, and the three of us, I was remote for most of it, but the three of us had a conversation throughout about the pitch and the tone, and to who this was for, because of course it was being published in India. I am an American, and I speak and think and write in an American English, which is not at home, obviously, in India or in other parts of the English-speaking world. And so there was a kind of de-Americanization that needed to happen to this text, and I'm glad that it did. And I learned a lot in that process, myself. But what's interesting, and what has been interesting since this came out, so it was published in India and immediately reviewed, over the following months in all sorts of of Indian press outlets, newspapers and magazines and blog sites, but all located in India. And what struck me, and everybody was sort of heralding the arrival of this new voice. And many of these reviewers were definitely people who could have gone and picked up one of Ajay's Hindi books that have been in stores for many years, and yet it was only with the translation in India that sort of Ajay, was able to, that he garnered the recognition of a much wider audience, and that has been a process that's been very instructive for me to watch. So, it's in English. It's a book that now can be a transnational book, and I was thinking of it because I'm a professor, thinking of an audience of my students, etc. But it certainly has a life in various parts.
Yes, and it's part of the textbook because of that.
Oh yes. We should.
Yeah, show it.
We use it as yes.
Can you say 2 words about this book? Yes.
I have my story. No, it is because because these stories are in English. Suddenly we were doing a textbook on Dalit writing, and we picked up one important story from this collection, New Custom. So that is possible because of translation. Thanks a lot.
I'm blamed for writing, for complex writing, even by Dalit writers and non-Dalit. But why?
I'm saying it in a celebratory way. It's a good thing.
But it was more than my choice. It was obligation because I have to prove that we have craft. I want to prove it.